Hi, fellow Alaskans. It's Dave Ritchie here, running for U.S. House Representatives Beckich's seat. I want to talk to y'all about Fauci for a second, give you a couple thoughts on that. I'm just processing the news that Fauci lied about the scientific consensus behind the origin of the COVID leak, and apparently he got a little high on his own supply, too. There, he got puffed up with power, and there were some things that happened as a consequence of that. So I know this doesn't come as news to anybody on the right, and I just would say, credit where due, long overdue. You got this one right for sure about Fauci. So what happened with Fauci? Senator Rand Paul released 1,100 pages from Fauci's diary. These are personal notes that I guess he wanted to do for a book. And on the eve of the congressional testimony that happened yesterday, and apart from gushing like a schoolgirl over his phone call with Barbara Streisand and musing with Julia Roberts about who was sexier, him or Tyra Banks, the substantive part about all of this is that Fauci notes in his journal that among the 11 prominent virologists that he conferred with on a conference call, this took place February 1st, 2020, so a month before COVID blew up, right, in March. 9 of those virologists that Fauci convened suspected that the COVID virus may have originated from a biolab leak in Wuhan, China, from which the COVID virus could have been released. Somehow. Doesn't speak well of a lab leak if that's how it happened, but it leads to an interesting question. What were the lab coats doing? Playing beer pong with the Petri dishes? Fauci's colleagues on that conference call cited a leading virologist at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a person named Shi Zhengli, who is known to engage in what's called gain-of-function research that could produce just such a result. And some of y'all might know this, but for those that don't, gain-of-function research occurs, it's either natural, and it could come about through, mutation or evolution, or by scientific tinkering, in some biolab somewhere. And it refers to when a virus acquires a new trait such as the ability to infect new types of hosts or spread more easily or cause worse disease. So in the lab, gain-of-function experiments, note this, strive to make pathogens more virulent and more transmissible. Oh joy, that's what the world needs. It's inherently very risky behavior, very risky research, and a lot of times people justify and say, well, there's medical things that we could learn from this or whatever. But I think it's a very valid question to ask. Is this something that is worth the risk of killing everybody if somehow it becomes transmissible outside of the lab? So Fauci's colleagues on that call, no, I'm sorry, I said that. So gain-of-function research is controversial because even when it's intended for benevolent things like medical research, it's exceptionally risky because of the risk of a leak from a lab. But it also can be used for some pretty dystopian shit, like bioweapons research. So anthrax and tire rims, it's what for breakfast, right? Just 2 of the 12 virologists Fauci consulted with maintained that the virus had migrated zoonotically, meaning from animal to human in its contagion form, via the nearby wet market in Wuhan. So guess which story Fauci insisted upon for a very long time. I'm going to discuss why I think all of this matters. But first, let me just say a couple things. I'll be brief. My name is David Ritchie. I'm running for Nick Begich's seat, U.S. House of Representatives. I think Nick's been a disaster for Alaska, and I very much hope you'll consider voting for me in the primary. That comes up on August 18th. The early voting starts on August 3rd. If I can earn your vote, I'd very much appreciate that. If not me, anybody but Begich. So moving on. So why does it matter how and where the COVID virus originated? Why is that a problem, right? Why are people so agitated? Or whether it was a natural zoonotic event or it was unleashed from a lab leak. And why does it matter if Fauci chose to speak as though the zoonotic animal-to-human theory was settled science and thereby suppress scientific dissent among his colleagues? Well, often the correct answer when you're faced with a fast-moving and evolving problem is we don't fucking know. Could be this, could be that. We're looking into it. We'll get back with you, keep you apprised. That isn't what happened. And a lot of people got pretty rankled about it because it seemed like it was ruled out of hand and people were treated like they're conspiracy theorists for saying what seemed like a very plausible possibility. And there was a reasonable degree of agreement upon that score. So, and the thing about people is, and this is true, I think it's universally true of the left or the right, people resent the living shit out of somebody that's a government bureaucrat, even when they're a scientist, saying that they're speaking as though the science is settled when it clearly isn't. And I think that they resent when you're a government bureaucrat speaking for all scientists, or when you're trying to suppress scientific dissent, or when you're gaslighting people about what you do and don't know for sure, and when you insist on treating skeptics of the natural origin theory, meaning Fauci's, zoonotic thing, as politicized cranks and conspiracy theorists. I think that conspiracy theorists is really, it's interesting if you look at the history of it, because it started after JFK, right? And it was a way to shut down any kind of discussion of the issue to invalidate the person bringing up the questions. Well, there are a whole lot of things that people label conspiracy theories that are just people have questions and nobody seems to want to answer them. And nobody has a good answer when they're willing to. And answer that makes sense. I mean, make it make sense. Often it doesn't. This is why I think there's such thoroughgoing distrust on both the left and the right of the government and frankly of each other. So it's a problem. And it just gets worse with this kind of shit. And so what's interesting is, what did Fauci know and when did he know it? Because this is from his journal now. So he notes in his journal dated January 26, 2020. So again, a couple months, not quite. I mean, it's about 1 month before March when it all blew up. Quoting Fauci, "It now appears using epidemiological and genomic data that the first infection was in early December and was not connected to the wet market." This is Fauci saying that. It was not connected to the wet market, which is what he had been saying it was. He'll amend that a little bit at the end, but I'll get to that. So early on, the Chinese were saying that there is no human-to-human transmission, and all the original 27 cases were from the wet market. Now we know, he's saying in his journal, now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier. And this is the qualification he puts on the end, which is interesting in itself. Having said that, somewhere the virus jumped from animals to humans. Okay, so what's that mean? Well, to me, it means two things. One, Fauci admits to himself, but not to y'all, that the Wuhan wet market was not the original source of the contagion. And this private musing makes the man both a liar and a hypocrite, because Fauci spent a very long time berating people quite publicly for questioning the wet market theory that apparently he himself knew to be factually wrong. And two, to be scroop fair, as the kids say, which, scrupulously fair, it means that Fauci still adhered to his animal-to-human theory, the zoonotic theory. The virus must have jumped from some critter somewhere, right? Not because he knows that to be true, but because he assumes that his theory must be correct. Well, there you go. This is the this is the most dangerous kind of thinking, especially when it comes from a government official, because it begs the question: how the fuck do you think you know what you think you know, my guy? I mean, how could you possibly know? I mean, you could say that we don't know still, but he's quite sure that it still was zoonotic, and it absolutely was not the Wuhan lab leak. And so if you start with a premise, as Fauci is here doing, and you insist that that premise, on defending it, irrespective of whether there's evidence otherwise or alternatives otherwise, well, your reason is chained to a faulty premise. I mean, you can't get out of that box, especially if it's wrong, which it matters if it's wrong. And so, why does it matter? Well, Fauci's admission suggests he deliberately suppressed and ridiculed scientific dissent among his colleagues, when he himself apparently knew better, and that he lied about the undetermined origins of COVID for one of two not very good reasons. One, to shield and protect gain-of-function research from the bioweapons charge, presumably because he or the government or both didn't want America to discuss and have that debate. Didn't even want them really to know about it. And the second reason is because Fauci is a rigid ideologue who started, huffing his own farts and didn't much like to be contradicted. Possibly both. They're not mutually exclusive. The COVID years are bug nuts crazy, and I ain't trying to minimize the harm that happened or, hell, Trump nearly died in October of 2020, as I recall. I don't know if I got the month right, but it was somewhere in there, and hell, 1.2 million people died in this country of ours, I mean, it was a thing. It went on forever. It was awful, But here's the thing, guys. By Fauci insisting on the zoonotic animal-to-human contagion premise, and by ruling out of hand the Wuhan lab leak till public pressure made him more circumspect, Fauci not only sowed societal division where it was unhelpful, further undermining public trust in our institutions, which are shit right now on the left and the right, so not helpful, and worse, Fauci denied our country the opportunity to discuss and debate a pressing issue, which is this gain-of-function research. Because even when it's well-intentioned, and that's kind of a stretch, I mean, when you consider distrust of government, when you consider the risks that are inherent in the research itself, is gain-of-function research worth that exceptional risk? And that's a question that's still worth pursuing. So, yeah, thanks for the listen, guys. I'll just wrap up and I'll say, if you get anything out of the content, if you enjoy following, I'd appreciate if you give a like. I hate asking for this shit, but I'm not asking for your money, so there's that. If I survive to the final four, to get to the ranked choice voting, I'll have to ask for money then. Right now I'm just spending my own money and making jack-like videos that are crap. I don't know how to edit, so every one of these is a one take. That's why I'm all the time. So all these are on a one take, and I just do my best. I'm either God's own fool or I care, or I like to think both. But anyway, I got into the race for two really modest reasons. And if you'll share the video, it helps get the outreach. If you do the likes, if you consider subscribing, all that shit. But I got in for two reasons. One is because I wanted to drag the living shit out of Nick Begich, because I think he richly deserves it. And the second is there was an issue that I felt like politicians absolutely were not discussing forthrightly, directly, honestly. And it's starting to change. I'm really happy to see it, and I hope that trend continues. But that issue is Israel and the Israeli lobby. And on that score, I wanted to say, I think I will have figured out by now how to put a link in the description below. So if you look into that, it's quite a long article. Pack a lunch, But if you're willing to read it, I'd love if you'd give me a comment on it and let me know, good or bad. I will tell you for what it's worth. I had 3 of Sitka's citizens declare me guilty of, let me think of what they all were: anti-Semitic propaganda, anti-Semitism, blood libel, poisoning the well with the discourse, and so forth. Let me just say this. I mean, it shouldn't have to be said, but it absolutely does. I am not anti-Semitic in any way. I have great respect and admiration for the Jewish faith. But I am anti-Zionist, and quite so. And I think it's just bad for our country. I think it's bad for Israel, but, that's their problem. I mean, they don't want to deal with it. But they shouldn't be our political, financial, or moral albatross any longer. So the title of my piece in the Sentinel is "End the United States' Special Relationship with Israel Now." So again, it's very long. I think if you give it a read, let me know. I'd be very curious to hear what you think, good or bad. So apart from that, I guess I've covered all the crap you're supposed to see. I think I've tried anyway. So I will say David Ritchie running for the United States House of Representatives, Alaska, Begich's seat. Hope to God that he is unseated, whether it's me or somebody else. And till next time, David Ritchie wishing you well. Thank you.